All right. David Fisher here, host of the David Fisher podcast show, where we're just trying to get a little bit better today than yesterday. I was actually thinking about maybe changing that up from instead of trying to get better a little bit from yesterday. How about we are trying to be present in the moment, understand our surroundings, and be more aware of how we are interacting as human beings. So I guess for me, that's still trying to get a little bit better than yesterday. So that's fine. But I also wanted to chat a little bit about the all right. I want to thank my friend John, providing me with some insight into where that actually had originated from. As I mentioned, probably in the first episode, for me, that was something that I had heard from another dear friend, Mr. Blanchard, who has his own podcast, and his show, he starts off with that, and it just really kind of caught my ear. But come to find out, that is actually something, well, not originally from Matthew McConaughey, but he is somebody that coined the phrase. I forget the name of his first movie when it came out. Anyway, he was doing an interview that my friend John had shared with me, where he was telling the origins of that story. And he was listening to, I believe it was a Doors live version, where none other than the late great Mr. Morrison was talking about. He actually said it 4 times. All right. And I believe the context had to do with fame or money or cars or the rock and roll lifestyle. But anyway, that was very educational to really understand that was where I think it was Matthew McConaughey was working on his first lines with maybe the director of the movie, and the name of the movie is going to escape me at this moment. I probably should have written it down. But anyway, that's where all right originally came from. The Doors, James Morrison, who then Matthew McConaughey repeated it, and my friend Jake Blanchard repeated it, and so now I am repeating it. And so the story goes, much like life, we hear things that catches our attention, we tend to repeat it. It's all part of that really cool reticular activating system, RAS. It's like when you go out and you buy a blue car, then all of a sudden you notice everybody else has a blue car. I'll never forget the first time that was something that became aware of me when I first joined the Cub Scouts. Perhaps it was the Webelos back then. And every single time the TV was on, there was a commercial for the Boy Scouts, and never think I noticed them before until I joined, and then all of a sudden it was all over the place. So, I thought that had everything to do with me, of course, but nothing at all to do with me. Just my mind now being more aware of something that was new to me. So that's the story for all right, and certainly want to dive right into today's episode. What we want to talk about today is, well, I'm going to talk a little bit about vulnerability. So Father's Day was just this past weekend. I had an amazing opportunity to spend some time not only with my 2 sons, wife, family, father-in-law, and extended family, but really to have some time to reflect on really my own relationship with my father. He has passed away a number of years ago, and definitely was a situation that I've had to spend a lot of time thinking about, not just in the fact that he's passed away and is no longer with us, but really as a boy growing up in a very dysfunctional home, what that looked like for me, being the son that really could never do enough. It was that story that so many of us are familiar with. Hey, you get all A's and a B, what happened in the class you got a B. Or really it was all different kinds of permutations of me trying to somehow gain control. And this conversation really ended up being a conversation that we had at home with that recent Ironman 70.3 that I had done, the following weekend. Really trying to articulate the message to my boys that it's really not about what place I came in or how long it took me, but it was really about trying to push myself through some discomfort, prepare for that event by doing, the training, and to take away, as I mentioned, the time with my oldest son and my friends that were able to share that experience with me as well. That was definitely one form of vulnerability, but being able to try to dissect that a little bit more, and how do I explain that to my youngest son. I am oftentimes very hard on myself, and not being able to really have that level of performance that I had anticipated. It has a couple different meanings for me, trying to get to that next level, but really trying to the exercise that we will work on is something called the 7 layers of why. I'm not really familiar with exactly who created this or the origin of it, but it's really trying to drill down deeper and deeper into why. Why do you do something? Why do I do something? Why is it important? Is it to get better? Well, why is getting better important? Is it to be accepted? Well, why is being accepted so important? And then just drilling further down and doing this exercise, kind of getting to the bottom of it as a boy, trying to really almost take control over my own life in a situation where I felt like I didn't have control. Being told what to do all the time, not living up to expectations. It was very much of, here's what I want done. Well, you certainly, did the job, but here are all the ways that you could do the job better. Knowing exactly what some of the consequences were for not doing things correctly, and that could be all different forms of punishment and retribution. But there was a lot of really trying to, I think for me, take control back. And we were really talking about how to exert that as a 14-year-old, as I'm trying to relay the story of, my Ironman to my own 14-year-old son, and even my younger 10-year-old son, as to where is the sense of accomplishment, or understanding that I don't really need to prove anything to anybody, not even really to myself, that having that satisfaction of being able to do it, or having already accomplished a lot of great things in my lifetime. Certainly, this beard here, it's gotten pretty gray. Some may say even a little bit white. In my mid-50s at this point, and have learned a lot of different lessons throughout my time, having a lot of different experiences in life, having time to reflect on a lot of different things, and understanding that really for a lot of the reason that I do things has to do with exerting control, and over situations that maybe I don't have control over. But that's really, I think, the where the magic lies, is like understanding that the why, not so much the how, not so much the what, but the why. And for me, that was really something that I don't think I realized, that, of course, as a young teenager, that for example, getting into fitness, understanding that, wanting to make the football team, being overweight, I needed to get in shape. found my way to the local gym. It was something that my parents didn't support. I, rode my bike there. Just figured out, how I was gonna, work there in order to have a free membership, so that I could use the Nautilus machines. I don't know if you guys remember the Nautilus machines when they first came out. They were, pretty cutting edge, and I don't think they're even in existence anymore. They're pretty outdated. But of course, there was free weights and there was racquetball, and it was really trying to get into that environment of fitness and getting myself in shape for the upcoming football practices. Back then, they were 2-a-days, pretty long days, pretty intense. I don't think that they even are in existence in a lot of places anymore, because they were just so demanding, and a lot of that has changed with making sure that there's proper sleep, nutrition, hydration. That really wasn't paramount back in that time frame. It was really just about who was going to show up to practice, who was going to put in the work 6-7 hours a day. There would be a break for lunch. We'd usually go swimming or do silly things around campus, and then we'd be back for afternoon practices. But that was really, again, me trying to exert control in a situation that I was told, hey, you're not going to play football. As a matter of fact, that was something that was very much a conflict in my house, because we were actually getting ready to move. My mom was diabetic and needed to be in a warmer climate. We're originally from New York. Tough winters, very difficult for my mom to get around. So we were trying to figure out how to move to a warmer climate, and my father wrapping up businesses and trying to manage and that part of life as well as the family. It was very much of a situation for me where I was, again, told, here's what you're going to do. We're going to be moving at some point. It was, I think, going to be my freshman year of high school. We had already just moved from another location in New York, across the river in Rockland County. We were now in Putnam County, really trying to figure that out. And I was not going to let my father dictate, at least, my life experience, or just be waiting to be basically moved from one location to another. This was probably, I don't know, at least the 5th or the 6th time that we had moved at that point in my life. And, of course, that's pretty challenging, especially as a kid. So I was certainly not on board with that plan. So going through that football practice was something that I felt like I had that control. And there were certainly, a lot of consequences that ended up happening as far as driving a wider stake between my father and myself. And really, that just grew wider and wider over time, to the point where we didn't actually move at that point in time. We stayed in the town that we were in and the high school that I was in. It was a couple of years later that my family was going to be moving out to the West Coast. And at that point, things had gotten to be pretty tumultuous, and I was actually no longer invited, I guess is an odd word to use, but allowed to stay in the house. I had already turned 18, hadn't graduated from high school at that point, but was told to essentially go find somewhere else to live. Spent some time living on different couches. There's a girlfriend's couch that I lived on for quite a period of time. There was actually one of the guys that worked for my father, lived on his couch for quite a period of time, as I tried to figure out, graduating from high school. And my family had moved out to the West Coast at that point, and I stayed in New York to graduate with, the class that I had started high school with my friends, and not go out to the West Coast for what would have probably ended up being, the last 4 or 5 months of my senior year. That had already happened to me once. In 8th grade, we ended up moving from Rockland County I literally had just made the lacrosse team, and was told, hey, you know what, you're just gonna have to quit the team. We're moving across the river, the Hudson River, that is. And I had been warned ahead of time, don't try out for the team. We're going to be moving, but that was something that, again, I felt like I was going to exert my own control and try out for the team, make the team. It was a sport that I really enjoyed playing, and again, suffer the consequences of having to, very much be embarrassed and, tell all my friends that, hey, you know what, I don't know, maybe we'll get together. It was probably like an hour or so drive from city to city or town to town. So that really wasn't that practical. And of course, being a new kid in a new town with, 3 or 4 months left of school was pretty challenging as well. So not to give myself any excuses, but really to help myself understand where I was coming from as a youth, and like why that even still, I don't know, let's just say like 40 years later, still trying to figure out like control and what that looks like in terms of how I interpret that and pass that on to the next generation of my boys, and not repeat a lot of those same behaviors and patterns that I had been shown and taught growing up with my dad. So that was really kind of where I wanted to go with this vulnerability conversation. Let you guys get to know me a little bit better as far as who Dave Fisher is, where does he come from, what is his story, and certainly appreciate you guys tuning in today to the David Fisher Show. And just in case no one has told you today, you are worth it, my friends. Much love. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there, and certainly everybody have a blessed day. Peace.